Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest. That's going to be Landon Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Thanks for joining us, Landon.
Hey, good to be here, guys.
All right, Landon, tell me what's going on, because we got this Omicron variant spreading like wildfire. And we've got all these airlines up anywhere from 5 to 11% so far this week. Nobody seems to care. They're all traveling. You can't get a test in Chicago to get out of town. What's going on here? What are you seeing as far as data goes from LikeFolio on the airlines?
Yeah, I tell you what, it's kind of an interesting situation, because when you look at how much people are talking about COVID, it's up year over year. It wasn't huge at this point last year, but it's still up year over year, and yet travel, everything is up. I mean, if you look at the TSA checkpoint numbers, it's up 15% quarter over quarter, 134% year over year. People are flying at almost 2019 levels. It's about 85% of pre-COVID levels. So we're just 15% off of normal. And I think a lot of it has to do with, the more people get COVID and get through it, I think the less that people are concerned with it. And so this variant, obviously I'm not a scientist, but it looks like this variant has the, extremely high levels of contagiousness, but milder symptoms and less likely to cause severe symptoms and death. And so I think that this one is scaring people a lot less. It's still dominating a lot of the media. As you can see here, it's spiking up, but it's nowhere near where we were in the initial spike or the October spike. And so I think that less people are scared. And when you look at it, there's quite a bit of people talking about flying on airlines. In fact, if you look at all the airlines, the big four airlines, all of them are up on a purchase intent year over year mention category. So all of them have more people talking about flying on them than they were last year, and some of them very high. And now some of this is, kind of skewed a little bit by people talking about, political issues like pilot mandated vaccines and things like that. But the mentions overall are still very high. And surprisingly, last time we talked about airlines, United was the one that kind of surprised us, and it's still dominating. So in this type of chart that we put out, we call this our outlier grid. The x-axis is the purchase intent. You want to be on the right. The y-axis is happiness. You want to be at the top. So top right is the sweet spot. And so United here, not normally one that, the consumers tend to love on social media, but for the last 6 months or so, it has been dominant. It's in the top right. This seems to be the sort of the underdog or the darling play right now in the airlines. If you ask me, any time in the last 5 years, it would have been either Southwest or Delta. But right now, United is making the play, and American's still falling behind in happiness. It's got a lot of negative stories with American just regarding, how the flight attendants act, things like that, passengers, what have you. But United, I think, is the play right now. And what's interesting is all four of these airlines are down from their year highs between 25 and 35%. So they're all way off of their one-year highs. And United is one of them that's down about 30% from its highs. So I think you could make a case that it could be a bit of a bargain here. It's poised to outperform the other three. And I really like where it's at. It's the only one of the four that has actually had an increase in happiness over the last year. So I'd love to hear Kevin's take on this and just see what you guys think here.
I'll give you my first take, Landon. I am living proof that this new Omicron variant is more contagious but less threatening. How do I know that? I'm positive as of yesterday. So I've got the Omicron variant right now, and I haven't missed any work, and I went for a run yesterday with the Omicron variant. So I'm telling you that I've had worse hangovers, Landon, than this feels. So I think this is much more contagious, but much less threatening. And I think that's what the U.S. population is starting to realize, that you can't continue to travel. I mean, I've got the TSA data in front of me. Yesterday was the only day of the last 7. 6 out of the last 7 days, it's been over 2 million travelers. Yesterday was the only day, just 1.9, that it dipped slightly below that. But I think this variant is just not as threatening. And I think each one gets less threatening than the one before, Landon. I think the airlines that have all been sold off hard into this and into these fears are starting to realize that we're in the late rounds of this. Could there be another one? Of course there could be. Will there be another one? Probably. The probabilities are there'll be another one, but they get less and less threatening, Landon. Your thoughts?
I agree with you. I'm glad that you're kicking its butt, Kevin. I had no doubts that you would. But I also got to say, like, I'm not a scientist, but everything I've read for the last year and a half has been coronaviruses get more and more contagious and less deadly over time. And so we're finally there. We're getting to the point, and I think people have heard that enough where they're saying, you know what, maybe we're just all going to get it and it's going to be no big deal. I mean, at this point, they're naming the common cold. So if it's got a name, it's scary, but if it's the cold, it's not scary. So I think that if enough people get through this and just have it or know someone that has it, it's no big deal, then the fears go away. And what's cool, if you look at this chart, is people talking about, booking flights up 27%, traveling for work is starting to come back up 29% year over year. We love that. The international travel mentions, that's up big, but that's because the number was so low a year ago. I mean, that was as close to zero as it's ever been. So, take that with a little bit of grain of salt. Flying for leisure, the lowest, because that's actually the group that started getting back into things before everyone else. Obviously, companies are going to be a little bit more cautious when it comes to flying for work, and international was pretty much shut down. So leisure being the lowest, you have to remember where things were a year ago. They started back up. Leisure travel started up way before everything else. But the overall picture is people are getting back out there. They're willing to travel. The fear is far lower. And again, TSA checkpoint TSA checkpoint data says that we're at about 85% of pre-COVID levels, which is incredible. I've flown recently, and I really couldn't tell a difference. I mean, planes are packed, airports are packed. It seems normal to me. 85, I would have guessed probably higher than that. So I think that it's getting there, and hopefully, this coronavirus continues on this trend where it gets more contagious and less deadly, and eventually it's just kind of no big deal and we can all get past that. And I think that's kind of where things are pointing. And if you have to pick a winner out of all this, surprisingly to me, I think it's United Airlines, just based on the data.
Yeah, Landon, and the way that I look at it is, I'm not surprised that, you're starting to see the international travel start to pick up. As far as mentions go, I just traveled internationally, and you're right, at the airport, it didn't look like there was any type of a COVID variant besides the fact that, hey, everybody had a mask on. The airport was still packed, right, going out of Chicago. But when you look at that data that comes through, so international travel mentions are really getting elevated, right? And the comparables against last year make it that outsized number above 43%. But what happens when companies are starting to delay back to work again? So that's going to take care of any business travel that's upcoming. You're already starting to see cancellations. CES in January in Vegas. A bunch of big name players and tech companies have already pulled out of that. Is that what's going to, you can look at the data that says, hey, I want to travel internationally, or I'm going to book a flight, but this will throw a wrench into things, and any new variants will throw a wrench. When you see the data as opposed to what actually happens, do you see a discrepancy there, or will we see a discrepancy?
Yeah, I think it's just going to come down to sort of a tolerance that people develop, or a resistance, I guess, to this, because, and I'm not talking about the disease, I'm talking about the fear, or just, the perception of the deadliness. Because you think about how people reacted to the initial outbreak, it was very severe. Then Delta was very severe as well, almost as high. And now this variant is kind of like, there's a lot less concern. And I think that, yes, it's smart for companies to play it cautious. They have to, they're going to. But, once we get through this one, and then maybe months down the road, another one hits, I think that eventually there's going to be a lag, but eventually businesses are going to get to where leisure travel is. And eventually people are going to feel safe. And if, some of these airlines have gone before Congress and talked about how masks are irrelevant and that they don't actually do anything. if they ever take away masks at airports and airplanes, I think we're instantly back to 100% of travel because then the perception is we're all good. There's no fear around it at all. So I think we're there. We're really close. And I think you watch the leisure travel, that's going to lead. I mean, if you look at the leisure travel data that we have, it was about 9 months ahead of business travel. So business is starting to come back right before Omicron. Now it's pulling back because of it. But leisure travel leads the way. Those people, individuals making decisions, are far more risk tolerant than businesses. And so I think the fact that we've got leisure travel booming right now versus the rest just shows you that down the road, business travel will get there. There's going to be a pause right now for this variant, but once it's over, I think it's going to resume.
Yeah, and we had that. I won't say anything negative about Anthony Fauci. He's already coming out saying you're always going to have to wear a mask no matter when you fly in the future, which is beyond my realm of sensibility there on that note. But Kevin, did you have another question here for Landon before steam starts coming out of my ears?
Landon, one last check. In your opinion, now, and I just want LikeFolio's opinion. What has Southwest done that has reduced their overall happiness and their overall strength? You and I have talked about airlines. You and I and Andy and Megan and Tom, we've talked about airlines many times. Southwest was always one of the strongest for happiness and overall service. What did they do wrong that made United Airlines just blow by them in terms of happiness?
Sure. The answer, for whatever reason, the answer is cancellations and delays. And I just don't think that they were equipped with a plan to handle this as well as some of the others. And that's one thing that people just have no tolerance for. I mean, it's nice to get a smile and to have good service from your flight attendant. They tell jokes, all this stuff, quick turnaround. They've got a lot of positives that get their happiness up. But if you cancel or delay a flight, then everything's out the window. I don't like you anymore, right? That's it. That's the non-negotiable. So I think that's a problem that Southwest had, and Delta had some of that as well. I think United handled it the best. American did not handle it very well, and they had the less friendly flight attendants, or at least more viral videos of less friendly flight attendants. And so that's the answer. And I think that really it just comes down to getting people where they want to go on time. And if you can add the bonus of a smile and a nice service and all that, then fantastic. But that is the non-negotiable.
All right, great stuff. As always, Landon's got UAL up in the far right corner there, and AAL dragging down on the positivity. And I get that, Landon. I fly American Airlines. I get that point there where American lagging in that particular data point. All right, Landon, thanks a lot for the rundown. Have a great Christmas and have a great New Year, and we'll see you in early January.